So we're back with another video. We wanted to get this one out because it's current project. It doesn't have to do with actually videoing trains, but it has to do with trains in general. So basically what our plan is to redo our address label, the lighted address label on our house, outside our garage, to basically a number board style for like a locomotive. Specifically, we took our inspiration from like a GP38 or an SD-40 style, with the number boards and headlights right above the cab windows, the front windows of the cab. And so I've been drawing out basically a smaller model. So basically we cannot do a full-scale number board style because we don't have enough space for that. We only have about 8 vertical inches on our front beam of our house, the trim I guess. We have 8 inches, so we're going to use those 8 inches, which is about, we figured out it's about half scale. So I've been drawing out the dimensions and the scaling dimensions of that. We kind of had to put a few things in place first, like the size of the number boards themselves, which are about in half scale, about like 4.5 inches tall, which would make our numbers about 3.5 inches tall. Each number, we have 5 numbers in our address. And then the headlights in the middle have to be basically 3 inches in diameter. And so in doing that, we kind of played around with different thicknesses of plywood. So we're trying to look into something that will be secure and last a long time, and look able to be sanded and painted to look like a metal, as it would look like on the locomotive. And so we haven't really done any of that yet. We're looking to go to Home Depot sometime soon so that we can kind of look at our lights situation, our kind of what we have to work with, our plywood materials that we might use. We might not even use plywood, it might be something else. We're going to look at the backing for the light, or the number boards, which is going to be like a semi-transparent but mostly opaque white something material. And then that's going to be painted over with a black, like UV resistant paint or something that will last a long time, and then we'll have patterns of the numbers over that paint. And when we paint it, it's usually going to be like a tape. We're going to tape numbers but not really tape, and then paint and then peel off the numbers back, and then we'll have like white numbers on a black background essentially. And then we're going to have to figure out how to do the headlight housing itself, which is going to be an interesting ordeal, because obviously it's not in full scale, so we can't just buy a headlight housing that's like a salvage yard or something. So we're probably going to have to do something like a model of that, and 3D print that just as a kind of a prototype. I don't know how that's going to be finalized, but that will just give us a good idea of what it's going to look like in the final design. So the design I have here is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of plywood. You have 2 for each number board on each side. 1 for the headlight backing, I suppose, if you want to call it that. 1 on top and 1 on bottom, which are going to be identical, slightly identical. I want to try and do this kind of prototypical curved bottom of the headlight. So that's going to be another part of what we have to figure out. And then we're probably going to have 2 kind of supports in the middle so that we have some inner structure to the whole thing. So basically, with all that said, right now what I'm trying to do with this piece of 1/8 inch by 4.5 inch by 8 foot, basically it's a cabinet plywood.
It's like a veneer kind of thing.
Right, so you have plywood sheet in the middle, and then I believe 1 like laminate kind of style on either edge. And this is very smooth, so it'll be ideal to paint over this, and this just happens to be basically if we did this in a 1/8 scale. So what I'm doing right now is basically drawing out all these patterns that I drew out on paper and transferring them to this piece of plywood or veneer. And so when I'm done, there'll be 7 parts, and we'll cut those out, and it's gonna be tricky with all the angles in the front, especially with doing those number board panelings on the sides. So what I figured out, I did some maths and figured out that basically I took dimensions off a real number board, a picture of one, and found that in the picture it was about each number board, the side, just this side panel, if you can see this part right here, or this part right here, which are identical, there are 2 of them, of course, is about, let's see, so in 1/8 scale, it would be about 2 inches by 3 inches, or kind of what I guessed it would be. But when I measured it in the picture, it came out to be about 5/8 inch by 7/16 of an inch. And that comes out to about 1.5 or something. No, that's 2 by 3 is 1.5. I divided 3 by 2 to get that. So when you divide 5/8 by 7/16, you get about, I believe it's 1.7 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. So that would mean that the 2-inch dimension is just a tad short. So it would really be 2 1/8 or so, 2.125. So we might end up changing that just a tad. The center portion for the headlight, obviously the 2-inch dimension is equal to 5/8 inch for the picture. And the width is about, I believe it was about 3/8. So that brings it out to about 1.75 as well, which is interesting how that works. If I got my numbers right, if I remembered right. So in scale, that would mean 1.25 inches, and that just makes it slightly under, which is, I think it's about 1.6. So this would also need to be a slightly bit wider if we end up changing that in the final design.
So some of you might be wondering what the headlights are for, because regular address lights on a house don't have headlights. Our plan is basically to use, since we're building a scale model of an actual number board from an SD-40 or a GP38, our plan is to use the headlights to properly illuminate a flag, so that we can have our flag flying
24/7.
overnight. Yeah,
or
24/7.
we want.
Right. So that's why we're incorporating the headlights. We were gonna, I mean, we would have had the headlights anyway, but we're gonna make them operational, I guess, is why they're gonna be there. They're not just gonna be like a dummy. They're actually gonna be operational headlights whenever the number board or whenever the address is lit.
Overall, I think that's pretty much the general idea. Might be hard to grasp from just a video if you don't see, but I'll probably be trying to finish these 7 sections in 1/8 scale today, cutting these out with like a table saw or jigsaw, and hopefully I can get those in a video soon and basically show you guys in person. That way it'll be easier for you guys to understand and basically see what it actually is that I just talked about. With that said, I'll get down to work on finish tracing those out in 1/8 scale and cutting them out, and we'll go from there.